WrestleMania 9, Becoming a Spectacle. Peacock produced this documentary about WrestleMania 9, in which we see never before seen footage that went on before the show. And it's interesting because not only have we never seen this, but they delve into some of the theories about WrestleMania 9, in which a particular story involving two of the biggest stars in the history of the business, particularly a black guy, I think you know what I'm talking about, that's actually mentioned here. And we hear other theories, other rumors, stuff we've heard before, like Bret Hart being upset about losing the title and Hogan immediately winning it after Bret loses it to Yokozuna. So that's really what it's about. That's more of the second half. The first half is how they put on the show. So to give you a background, the documentary really highlights, to begin, WWE's relationship with the Caesars Palace, and particularly it started when WWE helped produce a boxing match at the Caesars Palace, which featured a Sugar Ray Leonard fight. So they've had a relationship with them. And the Caesars Palace in Vegas, it's a hotel and casino, and it's one of those, in which I've been there before, that's very themed. So the theme is the Roman Empire. If you've ever gone into the mall portion of it, you'll see all this incredible Roman style architecture that's incredible. It comes to life. They even have shows. It's really beautiful if you've been to the Caesars Palace. And when it was built with these other themed casinos and hotels and resorts, in which it's more so directed towards children, as per what, in contrast to what Las Vegas is, which is Sin City. So the Caesars Palace was one of them. The Excalibur. I think you have the I forget what it's called. The Pyramid one. I don't even know the name of that. But there's other hotels that were built at that time, and Caesars is still it's still popular. But that was the whole theme of it, and they wanted to attract events to really make it seem like an important venue, and WrestleMania was perfect for that. Las Vegas at this time wasn't a sports city. Yeah, they had gambling, but because of the gambling, many sports organizations really didn't want to touch it. It's not like we see now, in which sports gambling is out of control. So what I found funny was they were reading some of the ticket prices for WrestleMania 9. There was a point where the highest was $250, the lowest was $25. Think about that now. 32 years later, has anyone seen the prices for WrestleMania 41 in Las Vegas? Wow, I think anyone would give, if you're attending WrestleMania, you'd probably give away a finger to pay that kind of fee to get into WrestleMania this year compared to stuff you're going to pay. And I wanted to go, but I mean, the prices are out of control. It almost makes you upset of how high it's gone. I know it's inflation too, but it's ridiculous compared to what that's going on now. So, for the documentary, we got a lot of interviews. We had Hulk Hogan, we had Lex Luger, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, Rikishi, who was more so talking about Yokozuna. We had Rick Steiner and Scott Steiner. We saw several others. We didn't get Vince McMahon, obviously. We got the man who was the producer of the event. We had people at the Caesars Palace, workers who were there as well. We didn't get Linda either, who had a prominent role. And it was funny because Linda even had to be an usher. And speaking of ushers, we'll get to that later. Because they had such few people, and there was such demand to go into Caesar's Palace that they had to have ushers. They had to have employees, volunteers, ushers. So we had a whole bunch of wrestlers there. They began to talk about how they needed Hulk Hogan to sell tickets because the ticket sales were lagging. They had Hulk Hogan and Brutus the Barber Beefcake, who's also mentioned here, teaming up. And this is after Beefcake had that horrible sailor accident in which his face was destroyed. There's a dark side of the ring about that. So they talk about the significance of the Roman Colosseum in the early 90s. They talk about how they were able to build the entire venue from an outdoor parking lot. And I've always wondered, where is WrestleMania 9? It's outdoors. Because when I went to Caesar's Palace, I was thinking to myself, where did it take place? I guess it basically just took place in an empty parking lot. Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe I heard it wrong. That's how they built it. And they put all the seats there. They put bleachers there as well. You can see that. And then they built the whole thing up. They made signs for WrestleMania 9, and they had an all Roman Coliseum, the Roman Empire theme. And that was how they created the show. And they had animals and all these different aspects, all these different aesthetics to make this seem like the first real themed WrestleMania. That's how I would describe it. So one thing that was pretty cool is we see wrestlers taking over the Las Vegas Strip, and Vegas back then it's not what it is today. So, but you still had wrestlers taking over the Strip. You had the theme of the show, the tagline being the world's biggest outdoor toga party. They filmed wrestlers during the day. They really didn't like that. Many of them were upset because they're not used to it. And the guy who was most upset about that was The Undertaker. Undertaker's furious because he's protected that character for, at that time, 3 years now. He's protected it better than anyone. He's upset that he's being filmed. And they also show something that's cool is they have rehearsals with animals. There was an elephant. There was a vulture Undertaker complained about. And I believe they had flamingos. There's the Flamingo Hotel. That makes sense. But one thing I found funny about it was many of the animals would just shit during rehearsal, so they left definitely the odor and they had to clean up. So the thing they go into is the big controversy was what happened to Hulk Hogan's eye. When Hogan showed up and he talks about this, he has a black eye. They had Randy Savage punch Hulk Hogan. They talk a lot about Hulk Hogan's ski accident. He talks about it, and Brutus the Barber Beefcake talks about it. So they're both backing it up. And Beefcake and Hogan, from what I know, are not on speaking terms anymore. I think that was probably the scenario that happened. Scott Steiner, he said that Randy Savage told him that he beat up Hogan. That could have just been because Savage and Hogan were not friends. They were not cool. And Savage just thought, hey, I'll make myself look like a badass in front of the guys for beating up the politician, the guy who's holding everyone down, the guy who's taking the title hostage. I'm going to make myself, gain more of a rep with the guys. That could have been what Savage was thinking. And Hogan and Savage had a lot of beef back then. Look, I think many people are upset with Hulk Hogan. They don't like him for obvious reasons. And they want to think, well, Savage beat him up. Yeah. I think most likely Hogan had that jet ski accident. That's my opinion. Some of you are going to disagree. Some of you want to believe Savage beat him up. I like Savage, but there was a story at TNA when I think Hogan confronted him backstage that Savage he was saying he was going to kick Hogan's ass, and Hogan confronted him and Savage didn't do anything. So I'm not sure. I'm not really going to say that that's what happened there. I think most likely Hogan had the ski accident and, Savage just played it up. And, because him and Hogan didn't get along. So they talk about the opening of the show. The Gorilla Monsoon welcomes us to the show. This is, of course, as I mentioned, the Roman theme. They're all wearing togas, and they show Jim Ross wearing a toga. This was his first official show as a broadcaster with the WWF at the time. Also, what's pretty cool was this was actually the first set for a WrestleMania. Every WrestleMania has a set. Now, back then, it was just a curtain. It was just, they'd come out like, it'd be like what the Royal Rumble is now, or what SummerSlam is, where there's no set. It's just, they come through the curtain. That's what WrestleMania sets used to be from 1 to 8. 9 was the first real WrestleMania set, and that's cool. And we didn't really get to see it really replicated up until WrestleMania 17, when we got a new set. But that at the time was the first real set we had. Or in many ways, the first stage as well. Because maybe not the HD stage that we get now, but it was the first thing in which it just didn't look like an ordinary arena. It has such a distinct look to it. That's what I really like about WrestleMania 9. That's one of the few positive things I can say about it, is it has such a distinct look that you can immediately identify which WrestleMania it is. You might have trouble identifying a match from WrestleMania 7 or 8, from 4 to 5, from 11 to 12. But you know what WrestleMania 9 is. You know all the matches because it's so distinct. So once you see the venue, you're going to know. Once you see a highlight for a match, you're going to know the venue it took place, which is WrestleMania 9. So they go through the card then, and they had Randy Savage's entrance to start the show. And then they had Bobby Heenan's entrance, which was the best. He rides on a camel backwards and he falls down. That's hilarious. Bobby Heenan's the best. R.I.P. Bobby. And then they go through the card, which is the worst part because the card fucking sucks. WrestleMania 9 is one of the worst WrestleManias of all time. Only WrestleMania 11 is worse. Maybe WrestleMania 2, that's it. Perhaps WrestleMania, I'm thinking 5's bad, 4's pretty bad, 27's pretty bad. So there's been a lot of bad ones. 15, 2000, 13's not very good either. So there's a lot of bad WrestleManias, but this was awful. This was a horrible show. And, they showed some of the entrances as well. They talked about Lex Luger's cool entrance with the showgirls. They had the pyro with the mirrors. That was cool. Undertaker had the great entrance with the Vulture. That was memorable. But, the show sucked. You have, to start the show, Shawn Michaels and Tatanka. They have a very good match, but Shawn gets himself counted out, so he keeps the Intercontinental title. You have a count out at WrestleMania. Then you had Steiner's and the Head Shrinkers, which was the best match. That was a very solid matchup. Steiner's won. And I think you went to, was it Bob Backlund and Razor Ramon? I'm pretty sure he went to that. I'll actually have to look up the card of WrestleMania 9. Actually, he went to Doink the Clown against Crush next. That's where he went to. And also forgot to mention Tito Santana wrestled Papa Shango on the pre-show. It was a dark match, actually, not a pre-show. And Papa Shango, the Godfather, actually did an interview on this episode or on this documentary. It was pretty good. He was really happy to be there because he worked in Las Vegas for years, so he had a lot of friends there. Then they went to Razor Ramon and Bob Backlund. That was awful. Money Inc. against the Mega Maniacs. That was Hogan and Beefcake. So that was one of the main events. That was the co-main event, basically. That match was awful. Hogan and Beefcake couldn't touch their faces. Beefcake's wearing a titanium plate, and Hogan, you can't touch his eyes. So, the match was awful. And you had Money Inc., Ted DiBiase, and Irwin R. Shyster, IRS, as the champs. They eventually retained by a DQ. Match was not very good. Yeah, it was bad. Then he had Luger and Perfect. Luger got the big entrance, and not good. One of the worst matches of all time. Certainly one of the worst matches in WrestleMania history. Perhaps the worst. Undertaker and Giant Gonzalez. Oh my god, that match fucking sucks. Then we had Bret Hart and Yokozuna in the main event. That's when Yokozuna won with the assault by Mr. Fuji. And then we all know what happens at the end. So Hogan, they don't tell us what happened, how he got Vince to agree with this, because Vince isn't in this documentary, obviously, but Hogan says, the whole reason they had him beat Yokozuna was so he can beat him, then give the rub to Yoko at King of the Ring. Why couldn't he give the rub to Bret Hart? Because we all know Yokozuna was never going to be the top guy in the company. Bret Hart was. Bret Hart was supposed to be the guy. It would have made perfect sense for Hogan to lose to Bret Hart at WrestleMania, if not WrestleMania 9, and lose to him at a SummerSlam. That's when it made sense. Or just don't come back. Just do the tag match and whatever. He doesn't have to lose to Bret Hart. But the Hogan beating Yokozuna is such bullshit. The thing is, everyone there loved it. It was such a cool moment for them. It was such a cool nostalgic moment. So that's why everyone in Caesar's Palace loved it. So it is what it is. Hogan became champion again. You had Nick Khan. He was an usher here. He went on to become the president of WWE. He was not interviewed here, unfortunately, but he was mentioned. I thought that was actually a cool touch. They had no idea. They didn't even know that. Triple H was, who is the head of creative now. He was on this documentary. He was interviewed, but no Nick Khan. So, overall, I'll say this. WrestleMania 9 Becoming a Spectacle is a entertaining documentary. It's 2 hours. It's lengthy. It's long. But it's a good documentary for a terrible show. Now, here's the thing. WrestleMania 9 is distinct. It's such a cool theme. It's such a unique WrestleMania. It's a horrible event. It's a horrible show because of the matches. Not because of how it was produced. Not because of the atmosphere. Not because of the aesthetics. Not because of the visuals, the glamour, the glitz, the pageantry of WrestleMania. Not because of the Roman Coliseum theme. Not because it took place at Caesar's Palace. It sucked because the matches were fucking horrible. But they really went into all the behind the scenes of WrestleMania and how they created it, how they produced it, and I found that really entertaining. And as I said, it's a good documentary for a terrible wrestling show. WrestleMania 9, here's what I'll say about it. It's interesting. It's a cool concept. was just a horrible show. It was a horrible. The matches sucked. That's what I'm trying to say. WrestleMania 11, which is the worst WrestleMania of all time, will never get a documentary. WrestleMania 9 will, because it's such a unique concept. It was something different. So that recaps my review for the documentary. If you have access to it, I'd recommend watching it. It's lengthy, but I think you'll be entertained if you're a wrestling fan. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that you'll like. And now begins WrestleMania week. Today is Sunday, and I have reviews lined up all week. Happy WrestleMania week, everybody.